Welcome back, boxing fans, to another great show with Sean on Boxing. Today we're talking about Bud Crawford, who has a big upcoming fight shortly, the beginning of August. And obviously, it's one of the best cards we've seen in the United States. Thank you very much, Turkey Ali Sheik. But we'll be right back with that. Stay tuned. Welcome back, boxing fans. So Crawford has long been this character in the sport of boxing who has been revered and escalated as one of the best fighters in the sport of boxing, long being one of the top pound for pound fighters in the sport. But even though this has been an ongoing situation, there's still been all this hate and negativity that somehow has been attached to him. And obviously that goes back quite a while, back to 140 pounds when he was blatantly being ducked by PBC fighters at that time, like Danny Garcia and Adrian Broner. And obviously that followed him to 147-pound division, where Errol Spence was being pushed as the best fighter at 147 pounds, even though Terence Crawford was still seen by many of these same people as pound for pound the best fighter in boxing. Try to wrap your head around that conundrum. The reality of the situation is he went on to prove that he was the best fighter at 147 and solidify himself as the number one pound for pound fighter in boxing. Until recently, of course, we have Inoue and Usyk who've made claim to that number one position as well. And that's not disrespectful to Crawford. It just shows you the ongoing depth and skill set in the sport of boxing today, that you really have legitimate competition to the number one position. And obviously, activity and performance is the final factor on who ultimately is seen as pound for pound number one. Currently, the majority of pound for pound lists and boxing pundits have either Crawford, Usyk, or Inoue as the number one fighter in the sport today. But what you do notice is that all three of them are consistently ranked somewhere from number one to number three, showing you the quality of all three of them. And no surprise, these three fighters all happen to be two-weight undisputed champions, only adding more gravitas to their accomplishments. So today we're going to be talking about Bud Crawford's upcoming card, his opponent, and a lot of the kickback that obviously continues to follow Bud Crawford in his illustrious career, which only is getting bigger and bigger as he moves forward. Drunk Irishman's in the house. Iceman, welcome. So let's get to it. So obviously this August 3rd, we have a huge card coming from California, Crawford versus Madrimov. And for casual fans, they may not be familiar with Madrimov, but at the end of the day, does it really matter? You're familiar with Bud Crawford, and Bud Crawford is moving up to his fourth weight division, trying to equal what obviously Canelo Alvarez and Inoue have already done, which is become four-weight world champions. And this would just be another great accomplishment to what already is a great career. This is a guy who obviously is seen as a future Hall of Famer and potentially one of the top 10 fighters in boxing today. And that just shows you the long road he's come through. This was a guy who out of the amateurs obviously was kind of overlooked, but thanks to Mikey Garcia and others who sort of pushed and gave him attention, obviously this helped get him signed to a major promoter. And then obviously from hard work and great performances have led Terence Crawford to where he is today. Hard work and dedication, as Floyd Mayweather used to say. Zaki says, this card isn't going to sell well. Lots of tickets available. Virgil Zoo falling out hurt. Missed out on the Mexican support. See, this is a problem with American boxing fans. You can give them everything, and then they still poo-poo it, and still dismiss it, and still downplay it. Damon says, salute to you, Newton. Bud is going to punish Madrimov. Madrimov is a big dude or a big dud. Canelo is a drug cheat, just like Barry Bonds. Joseph S., who's even focused on Canelo Alvarez? Keep your narrative to yourself. The reality is Canelo proved himself clean, which is why now he fights and is considered one of the top fighters in boxing. right? So, you can cry and moan about it, but we're talking about Bud Crawford right here. Techniques in the house. He might be on some juice. Canelo is, oh my God. See, some dudes, they're not boxing fans, right? They're all about narratives. Joseph S., what he isn't telling you is that tons of fighters he supports probably have also been caught using PEDs. PEDs in sports is the norm. And people like him like to ignore that and try to act like it's everybody else's favorite fighter that's juicing, but their favorite fighters or their favorite sports person is clean. I'm a Barry Bonds fan. Barry Bonds inevitably is one of the best players to ever play the sport. And that was proven well before he even used PEDs. And when he used PEDs, literally everybody in the MLB was using PEDs. Zaki fans shouldn't worry about the books. That's the fact, right? You're getting this great card and you're worrying about how successful this card's going to be. Why do you give a fuck? As an American, you should be happy that Saudi Arabia is spending some of that money in making big fights in Saudi Arabia and using a black American fighter who's revered as the headline fighter on that card. Like, that's all you should worry about as a boxing fan. We don't need to start talking about if tickets are available, it's not going to sell, it's not going to be successful. Why do you care? Like, as boxing fans, we're not getting fucking paid, right? We're paying. So why are we moaning and groaning about how successful a fight's going to do? Only in boxing do you hear this kind of stupidity, literally. People will look for any narrative to push negativity towards something in the sport of boxing. Iceman says, if Bud wears black trunks, I see him get knocked out face down in a dream. In a dream? Let's see if your dream becomes reality. Because currently, that's one reason why I made this video. I saw a lot of people perpetuating the narrative that Madrimov is going to beat Crawford. And anything is possible, right? That's why we watch the sport, right? Everyone thought Canelo was going to beat Bivol. And it was a clear-cut decision. People were calling Bivol a cherry pick. They were really downplaying him, even though he was an undefeated world champion who was primed. But people wanted to dismiss Canelo Alvarez, act as if somehow he was ducking better fighters, yet you can't tell me a fighter that's better than Bivol that Canelo hasn't fought. Don't say David Benavidez, because that ain't fucking true. Let's wonder if Bivol would have had any problem with Vosdik, and we know the answer to that one already. The reality is Bivol proved that, you can't overlook fighters. And Madrimov is in a similar position. Many people, specifically American boxing fans, don't know who he is. But that's because they refuse to follow boxing globally. They want to only highlight American boxing and then ignore everyone else and act as if everybody else is tiers below the Americans, which isn't true. And when you do that, you're really only costing yourself a lot of enjoyment in the sport of boxing, because there's great boxing from around the world. Madrimov is a nobody to most fans. He isn't a pay-per-view headliner. He just criticized Tank fighting. Martin saying he wasn't pay-per-view worthy. What you're failing to talk about is that literally Tank Davis has consistently been fighting fights on pay-per-view against opponents that weren't pay-per-view worthy. Consistently. And that was the issue. Why is this guy consistently still fighting fighters that aren't headline fighters instead of fighting the guys who he should be fighting? Name opponents, right? And what was Frank Martin bringing to that fight? Was Frank Martin a world champion? Had he ever been a world champion? Madrimov is a world champion. Bud Crawford is moving up to his weight division to take on a world champion to try to become a 4-weight world champion. And this card is fucking way better than any card Tank Davis has ever been a part of, including the David Benavidez card. Come on, Sean. I'm going to need you to keep that same energy. No, Zaki. It's people like you that don't keep the same energy, unfortunately. Don't compare Madrimov to Bivol. Why can't we compare Madrimov to Bivol? They're sparring partners. They trained each other. Bivol used Madrimov to prepare for the Canelo Alvarez fight. And Madrimov has actually used Bivol in preparation for the Bud Crawford fight. There's obvious connections between those fighters. Obviously, stylistically, they're very different, but they're both very good amateur fighters, which I will show you later on in this video. And obviously guys who were overlooked. And that's the point. You choose to ignore that, but that's the point. Bivol was not considered anything special until after he beat Canelo Alvarez. Turkey Ellis Sheik wants Bud versus Boots. Do you think Bud will duck? We're also going to be talking about that as well, Gleam TV. Bud Crawford is not the one who ducked Boots Ennis. And for people that want to continue to perpetuate this myth, they only expose themselves. Because there's not one time when Bud Crawford blatantly took a different route to avoid a fight with Boots Ennis. But there are multiple occasions where Boots Ennis took a different road avoiding a potential fight with Bud Crawford. When was the last time Tank Davis fought an active belt holder? All he's done at 135 is being elevated to WBA champ. Exactly, Drunk Irishman. But guys like this, they're not boxing fans. They're narrative pushers. Because Tank Davis has never fought a world champion at 135 pounds. He didn't earn a title at 135 pounds. He was elevated. He is an email champion, just like Devin Haney was email champion. By beating Frank Martin, a top contender who's never actually fought a top 10 lightweight. Like, you know, that's the reality. And then you wonder why nobody really cared about that fight as far as casual fans, because Martin was an unknown fighter who wasn't a world champion. Bivol is a generational talent. Diesel, it's nice that you're a big Bivol fan, but if he ends up getting knocked out in the 8th round by Beterbiev, and Beterbiev goes on to become undisputed, Bivol is then going to be a footnote. Not to say he's not going to beat Beterbiev. He should beat Beterbiev. Beterbiev is a 40-year-old with injury history. But the reality is, it's just as likely he gets knocked the fuck out in the process. Do you even know how Madrimov got that title? Frank Barton is more skilled. Zaki, your idea of more skilled is based on what? Amateur pedigree. Madrimov has way more amateur pedigree than Frank Martin does. Resume. Pro resume. Madrimov's resume is much better, even though he's only had 10 professional fights, than Frank Martin. Age. Frank Martin is older than Madrimov. How did he win the title? He fought a top contender, a guy that obviously had a better resume than Frank Martin and a better resume than anybody Frank Martin has ever fought. And what did he do? He stopped that guy easily. And obviously now is getting a Bud Crawford fight. See, the reality of the situation is you should be excited about this fight as a way to praise Bud Crawford for doing something historic. But you're trying to shit on it. Why? Because you're one of these Errol Spence fanboys who consistently has looked for ways to downplay, dismiss, and discredit Bud Crawford. This video is literally made for you and people like you who pretend to be all about Black American boxing, but yet here you are consistently shitting on the most fucking exceptional Black American boxer today, right? And that's the irony in this situation. Bud Crawford is literally the best representation you have, yet you don't want to support him. You want to downplay him, dismiss him. And if I don't put him on my pound for pound #1 list, then you're going to fucking cry racism about it. But yet you're going to consistently shit on his card, shit on his opponents, shit on his accomplishments. And like people like Gleaming TV talk about how he's ducking Boots Ennis. Boots Ennis, who's another email champion, a guy that was given a title, never earned a title. And I'm not crapping on him, but I told you fucking a long time ago, that's what Virgil Ortiz and Boots Ennis were trying to do. They were trying to get those vacant titles after Spence and Bud Crawford moved up in weight, right? The only problem with Virgil Ortiz is he outgrew the weight. For Boots, he's there. So he was able to capitalize on, obviously, Spence and Crawford moving out of that division. And now he is the man. And I look forward to him going on and dominating the 147-pound division. Boots was only ranked #1 by the IBF ranking. That's why he went that route. No, Zaki, see, once again, you prove that you're a casual. Boots Ennis was #1 or #2 ranked by the WBO. Whoever was number one, Crawford fought him, or that guy was Virgil Ortiz, and he moved to go for the WBA. I can't remember the specifics of it, meaning that Boots Ennis was going to be elevated to Bud Crawford's number one mandatory from the WBO, who consistently had Bud Crawford fight his mandatories. But like Virgil Ortiz, Boots Ennis chose to go a different route. They chose to go challenge Errol Spence for the WBA and the IBF titles. Tank fought Gamboa. Gamboa was a champ at 135 before. Oh, really? Was he a champ at 135? Okay. Who did he beat to become a champion at 135? And when was the last time he was involved in a championship fight? Dude, man, we're not talking about Tank Davis. We're talking about Bud Crawford. But you'd rather bring Tank Davis into this argument. Again, doing what? Dismissing and downplaying the fighter who's far more accomplished than any other fighter that represents you. Tank fought a champ at 140 as well. No, he didn't fight a champ at 140. He fought a regular WBA champion. He is not a real champion. It's not Boots' fault that Spence and Bud held the belts hostage. Held the belts hostage. Listen to this. I mean, and you know the funny thing is, Zaki's not even a Boots Ennis fan, right? He probably never started talking to him until like a week and a half ago. Whereas I've been talking about Boots for years now and praising him as a potential long-reigning, pound-for-pound number one fighter. No, those guys didn't want that smoke because they knew they would be given a title when those guys moved up. So they were waiting for those two fighters to fight their inevitable fight, which of course was delayed. Thank you, PBC. That's why it was delayed. You living in the past, buddy. Right now, Boots wants Bud. Bud hasn't said a peep. Talk about that. Gleam TV. Who the fuck is Boots Ennis? I like Boots, but who's Boots Ennis? Is Boots Ennis somehow some superstar fighter that's actually done something in the sport of boxing? Has he ever beaten a world champion? Has he unified titles? Has he done something that historically is considered fantastic? Or is he an email champion who defended against Bud Crawford's leftovers in his last fight? And Bud Crawford has now moved up to take on a champion in his fourth weight division and potentially maybe fighting Canelo Alvarez in the biggest fight in boxing. But you'd rather he direct his eyes towards Boots Ennis. Yet what Boots Ennis should be focusing on is fighting Mario Barros, Stanionis, and fucking Howard and becoming an undisputed 147-pound fighter. Something that Bud Crawford has already done 2 times already. If he does that, he will then build his own legacy, and that would be great. Drunk Irishman says, Gamboa was never a champion at 135, plus he was washed up when Tank fought him. Exactly. But facts over fiction, right, Irishman? Right? These guys want to pretend something that they don't even know the fucking truth to. Sean, when are you going to call out Janibek for being rushed to the hospital for being a weight bully? It's time for him to move up to stop fighting tomato cans at 160. Jackie, once again, you pushing narratives. I mean, post that fight, I talked about him moving to 168. Where were you? Where were you? You know, and I will talk about that as much as I'll talk about as fucking Virgil Ortiz having health issues at 147 and saying that he should move to 154. I kept the same energy. When are you going to keep the same energy? My bad. Yes, exactly. Does interim champion have value? Does interim champion have value? Okay, let me ask you one question. Did you give Canelo Alvarez any credit for moving up to 168 pounds to beat Rocky Fielding? If your answer was yes, then okay. Then interim champion has value. If you didn't give him any credit for doing that, then that tells you your response right there. Keep your energy, because I gave Canelo very little credit for fighting Rocky Fielding. I never called him a 3-weight world champion, or in that case, it would have been his 4th weight world champion by beating Rocky Fielding. Just like I won't call Tank Davis a 3-weight world champion for fucking WBA interim titles. But let's move forward, because we are talking about Bud Crawford. So here's this card coming up, and I think it's fucking great that Eminem, especially with all the negativity now being thrown towards him based on the song he just came out with, which I think is fucking kicking. I think it's a great song, and it's excellent that he's going to be once again walking Bud Crawford out. Eminem, I was never a big fan of Eminem's music, but anybody that's getting fucking attacked by the woke fucking left, I have to sort of favor them and have a soft spot in my heart for them. So this is great news. I'm happy to see him here. And of course, Virgil Ortiz versus Tim Tszyu would have been fucking incredible on this card. That would have made this card so fucking great that historically it might be hard to ever match something of that. Eminem is washed. Look, once again, Eminem literally just came out with a song that's fucking killing it, but he's washed. I mean, what are you talking about? Canelo put the rehydration clause on D-plus fighters in Rocky Fielding, so no credit. Yeah, well, Tank Davis has put rehydration clause on Mario Barros and Ryan Garcia, and apparently Frank Martin as well. So then no credit, right? Welcome back. Eminem is from Detroit. Why is he so obsessed with Nebraska? See, Zachy, every time you open your mouth, you just expose yourself as nothing but a hater. Literally, that's all you do, right? Literally. But let's look at this card. So, of course, you got Crawford versus Madrimov, which is for a WBA world title. You have David Morrell versus Kalajits. I mean, anyone that's a real boxing fan, especially these people that are anti-Canelo Alvarez, they should be fucking super excited to say David Morrell get back in the ring. David Morrell is easily seen as one of the best 168, 175-pound fighters in boxing today. This guy was my pick to beat David Benavidez and Canelo Alvarez if either one of them were ever interested in taking him on. But I understand high risk, low reward. That is what David Morrell is. But Morrell he's different from most Cuban fighters because he's an exciting fighter with speed, skill, and power, and always puts out great performances. Definitely one of the most exciting fighters in the sport today. Then, of course, you have Isaac Cruz. This guy, Zachy, was talking about how the Mexican fan base is going to be missing because Virgil Ortiz isn't here. Yet the reality is Isaac Cruz is probably bigger in the eyes of Mexican-American fan base right now than Virgil Ortiz is, because he's coming off of what is seen as one of the biggest wins of his career, beating Rolly Romero, even though that does sound ridiculous when you say it out loud. But he's got tons of props and praise because of that fight, and obviously historically being tied together with Tank Davis and going the distance with him. He's going to be facing Jose Valenzuela, a very good opponent, very different kind of opponent for Isaac Cruz's WBA title. So right there you have two titles. David Morrell, his WBA regular title, I guess it must be dropped. I'm not sure if that Kalajis fight is going to be at 175 or 168 or not. Eminem putting these rappers today out of business. Eminem's new album, He Destroyed P. Diddy. Hey, Carlos, have you seen Cal E About Man? He is destroying woke culture. Destroying woke culture. I don't know how any realistic person can look at that and not have praise for him, considering who he is attacking in the process, the woke culture. That's why I said I'm not a big Eminem fan, never really listened to his music, but based on the concept alone, I support it. Then after Cruz defending his world title, Darkness, you got Andy Cruz, another great Cuban fighter, obviously from the Cuban school of boxing, not the stylistic fighter I like, but a guy who literally could fight any of the world champions at 135 pounds tomorrow, right? You throw him in with Baranchek, everybody picks Cruz to beat Baranchek. Throw him in with Lomachenko at this point, I think it would probably be a 50-50 fight, people picking Isaac Cruz to beat this version of Lomachenko. You throw him in with Shakur Stevenson, that fight is really, really competitive. People may favor Shakur, but Andy Cruz is right there. And then you throw him in with fucking Tank Davis, and he easily could outbox Tank Davis and go on to win against him as well. That's how good Andy Cruz is. Obviously, he's a guy that doesn't have the spectacular style of a Tank Davis or a David Morrell or a Bud Crawford, but what he does have is sublime skills. So all those people that are huge skill boxing fan type of people, they should love Andy Cruz. And him facing Antonio Moran. Moran's a good fighter. It's a solid opponent. Where are we? Nope, haven't seen him around in a while. When Eminem apologizes for what he has said about Trump, I'll care what he has to say. Psh. I hope Eminem sings, not just walked out. I think he will this time. Abdullah Mason is the future face of boxing. Yes, Abdullah Mason is, along with Boots Ennis and potentially Bam Rodriguez and quite a few other young fighters. I mean, that's the great thing about boxing. You continuously get new players coming into the sport. Same here, man. If I see him, tell him Brian says hi. De La Hoya made it clear he won't sign Shakur. And what does that mean? Yo, Harkin, predictions. Name the soon-to-be winner of the card. Yo, Iceman, my bro, hope you're doing well. And then, of course, after that, we have this one guy. I don't know who he is, but obviously he's there because of his connection to Saudi Arabia, I would think. And then you have Jared Big Baby Anderson. I mean, think about these two heavyweight matchups you have on this card. That shit's dynamite. Jared Big Baby Anderson facing Martin Bakole. Most Americans won't know who Martin Bakole is, but that just proves their stupidity and ignorance. Martin Bakole is potentially a top 10 heavyweight, just like Jared Anderson. He's really a good fighter, only one loss, and since then has run off victory after victory after victory after victory. Don't be surprised if Martin Bakole beats Jared Anderson. That's how good this fight is. This is probably one of the best heavyweight matchups of 2024. And then, of course, you have Andy Ruiz versus Jarrell Big Baby Miller. The two big babies are on the card. And obviously, this is a good name matchup, right? Jarrell Miller, big talker, obviously always has something to say, a great quote machine, and Andy Ruiz, ex-heavyweight world champion. I mean, another great matchup. So this card is fucking stacked. I mean, there's not much not to like. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fights mentioned in this card I'm excited about, right? I will be watching from start to finish. I'll be watching it on DAZN, and I'll be super excited the fact that I can watch it on DAZN. And I'm happy to see Bud Crawford get another big platform to showcase his ability. Yo, Iceman, my bro, hope you're doing well. It is a good card. It's a fucking great card. I mean, we know heavyweight boxing really grabs global attention. So having these two big heavyweight matchups on it, that speaks volumes. But then you also have the Mexican perspective with Andy Ruiz and obviously Isaac Cruz. Then, of course, you have world champions and Olympians, right? Great Cubans who historically maybe aren't crowd favorites, but both of them are two of the best fighters in boxing today. And one of them is one of the most exciting fighters. So what's not to like? Sean, do you think D-style boxing is authentic? D-style is not bad. I mean, I've had my run-ins and disagreements with him over the years. But overall, I mean, he's shown through years and years that he is a consistent boxing fan, not about clickbait and you know, selling his channel through fake narratives, but actually just being a fan of the sport. So I don't have anything bad to say about D-Style. He might say bad things about me, maybe, I don't know. But the reality is he's been here for a long time and proved his consistency for sure. Zepeda needs to step up and fight Shakur. Zaki, Zepeda doesn't need to fight Shakur. Zepeda needs to fight Baranchek to become the WBO champion. And once he becomes the WBO champion, now he actually has a world title and can negotiate a fair split in any of the fights he gets, whether it's against Lomachenko, Tank Davis, or Shakur Stevenson. And the reality is, at this point, Shakur Stevenson has no promoter, so he's not in a position to fucking expect or ask for anybody, because the truth is, who's negotiating for him? He better sign with DAZN or PBC or fucking somebody, because his career is on fucking hold until he does something like that. And that's just the way boxing rules. But let's move forward with this video. So this is currently the top fighters at 154 pounds. The champions. You have Sebastian Funduro, Madrimov, Murtazaev, and Funduro, who is obviously a unified champion. I think he is on champion in recess because I think the Sergey Bolchak fight, his next fight, is going to be for a world title, if I'm not mistaken. He's going to be fighting Virgil Ortiz, and maybe it's just for an interim title. But first of all, you think about that fight. We know that Funduro is going to potentially be fighting Spence. That is what we hear, which is a great fight. Potentially the last fight we'll see Errol Spence involved in. And then, of course, you have Bolchak versus Virgil Ortiz Jr., which is a great fight, very similar to what we wanted to see Virgil Ortiz do at 147 by fighting Stanionis. Bolchak, I don't know if he's as good as Stanionis, but nonetheless, they're similar fighters, hard punchers, good, technical fighters, a little robotic, but, hard punchers. And for Virgil Ortiz, very good opposition. Obviously, Bud Crawford fighting Madrimov. Some people say that Madrimov is the best of these four champions. And in truth, I think that's true. I think Madrimov beats Fundura and Murtazaev easily, without fucking a doubt. So people that have tried to downplay and dismiss Crawford for cherry-picking Israel Madrimov because he's only had 10 professional fights, once again show their ignorance to the sport. Because the truth is, Madrimov is a better fighter than the other two champions. And obviously is a very dangerous opponent for Bud Crawford. Where are we? I heard Tim got Lubin next. That's what's being talked about. But at the same time, it seems a little stupid that Tim Tszyu takes on Lubin. It would make more sense for him to face Bakram Murtazaev for his IBF title. It would be easy to pay Bakram Murtazaev money to come to Australia to defend his title against Tim Tszyu there. And then Tim Tszyu could win, become one of the champions, along with Bud Crawford, potentially, if he beats Madrimov, and obviously Virgil Ortiz, who would be there for the WBC, and potentially Crawford, Spence versus Funduro for the WBO. And at that point, we're really talking about some fucking great fights moving forward. Skip Bayless is stepping down. Yeah, whatever. Lubin said he didn't want to go to Australia, last I heard. See, that's the problem with dudes like him. He thinks he's coming from a position of strength, right? There's no title on this fight. It's just an elimination fight. Either you go to Australia to fight him, or you continue to fucking not get fights, right? Because you're with the PBC, who's not even putting out cards. Skip is getting the boot. Rankings suck. What's up, Sean? What's up, Mars? Skip has contract dispute. How about Tim Tszyu versus Xander Zayas? I still think Xander Zayas needs one or two more fights. Obviously, he's very young still and has shown that after 6 rounds, his engine isn't great. So it'd be interesting to see him fight some other guys that maybe weren't quite that level. I heard talks about Xander Zayas fighting Josh Kelly. That would be a good fight, especially if you wanted to go to the UK to make that fight. You get paid really good. And obviously Josh Kelly is beatable, but, a good fighter and would give him more experience. So I think he should go that route first and allow these other guys to get their titles and then try to earn his fight. Darkness says, honestly, I'm kind of sad about Skip going, but I stopped watching him because of Shannon being a race baiter and Skip apologizing for being white too much. Well, with all these broadcasters now, that's the new narrative, right? If you're a white announcer, then you have to apologize for being white. And if you're a black announcer, you got to consistently be pushing racial narratives. I made a video on my basketball channel talking about the ex-NFL player who has his own channel, who was just talking about the whole Caitlin Clark Cooper Flag scenario and talking about how people are going to use them for racial narratives. But yet that's exactly what he's fucking doing. Cooper Flag plays 2 games against the U.S. team and all of a sudden, is being tied together with all this race shit, right? And who's doing it? The fucking media. The people perpetuating this consistently are the media. And fans, unfortunately, buy into it because most of them are uneducated and fucking ignorant. Top Rank will build up Xander and Melanicki Jr. to fight each other soon. Well, fucking Xander will kill Melanicki. Backroom Murzaliyev is a good fighter, and Bud has to be useful or careful. I have been telling people that this is a far harder fight than Spence, and they've been laughing at some, but still think Bud will win. Are you talking Backroom Murzaliyev? Well, Crawford's fighting Israel Madrimov, right? Why is Junta Nakatani fighting Vincent, who is Jason Maloney's leftovers? Because he's the #1 ranked fighter by the WBC. We need Bam versus Junta at 118. Well, you need to tell fucking Bam to move his ass up to 118. What we need at 118 is Junta fighting Inui's brother to unify titles, and do that, and you build up a huge rivalry between the monster and Junta Nakatani in Japan. Of course, American fans don't care, but again, these fighters don't need to pay attention to American fans because American fans aren't paying them. So who gives a fuck what they want? The only time we're going to see Junto or Inui go to the States is if they have a huge opponent, potentially a Bam Rodriguez. But it's unfortunate that Americans can't even support one of their own. They can't support Bud Crawford. They can't support Bam Rodriguez. 2 pound-for-pound top 10 fighters. That's why we're having this conversation today, right? It's ridiculous that Americans want everyone to kowtow to what they want, yet unfortunately don't know fucking anything about the sport of boxing. But let's look at Backroom Madrimov, Israel Madrimov. 10-0-1. That one should not be a draw. 7 KOs. Obviously, what we're looking here is his amateur pedigree. If you follow amateur boxing, you can see the level of opposition this guy faced in the amateurs, showing you, though, even though he's only had 11 fights in the pros, this guy's amateur background is fucking huge. We'll go through a few names that are like medal winners in the Olympics and Euros. First, you have sorry if I butchered their names, Kulak Hamet, Kazakhstanian fighter, great fighter. Then you have Felix Marcial, Filipino fighter, great fighter. Then you have, of course, Gleb Bakshi, another great fighter. You have, of course, Arlen Lopez, multiple Olympian medal winner, a great fighter, historically one of the best Cubans in and around that weight class. And then a fighter right now who's made such a fucking huge statement at 168 pounds, Ulysses Iglesias, right? 36-8 when he beat him by split decision, right? This is the opposition Madrimov was fighting. Primarily guys who now are 168, 175 pound fighters. When he was facing them in the amateurs, obviously these guys were still bigger fighters than him, went on to now represent bigger weight divisions. He's currently obviously at 154 pounds and obviously training and sparring with Bivol, a guy who's currently 175 pound world champion, right? People that don't follow the sport, don't watch amateur boxing, maybe don't know the names of the fighters I just mentioned. If you don't know Iglesias, then you don't even know pro game because he's made such a huge statement in 2024 at 168 pounds. People are literally calling him the best 168 pound fighter in the world today, right? When you think about him and Morrell, Cuba's got 2 fucking monsters representing 168, 175. So don't be surprised if those 2 fighters dominate those 2 divisions for the next 10 years. Is having a jaguar safe as a pet with my toddlers? Fuck no. I didn't know he beat Ulysses Iglesias. I'm big on Ulysses. Sorry, I meant to say Madrimov. Yeah, that's what I figured. I want Ulysses versus Mimbilla. Yeah, that would be a great fight. Mimbilla probably should be fighting the other Canadian fighter who's a top 168 pound fighter. Obviously, it may be a little premature for Iglesias to get that fight yet, but this is the kind of caliber of opponents that Madrimov has fought in the amateurs. And I didn't show his whole career. I just screenshot the one little section that's at the top, just showing you who he was fighting most recently prior to becoming a professional. So here's some of the stuff we find on social media. People supporting and people hating on Bud Crawford. Obviously, we have this guy here. This is breaking news. If Canelo is ducking David Benavidez, then Terence Crawford is ducking Jerome Boots Ennis. Not everyone is Mayweather or Hagler. Well, what does that mean? Mayweather ducked fighters. He never fought fucking Erislandy Lara. He never fought, what's his face, Paul Williams. You know, he didn't fight prime fighters at 147. He literally retired for 2 years and let those guys fight one another, and then came back after they'd beaten up on one another. So joining Floyd into that conversation, let's be real. Right now, the conversation is, do you think Crawford would beat Floyd Mayweather? Floyd probably would never have fought Crawford, because Floyd never fought somebody that had a longer reach than himself. And he would be giving up 2 inches in reach if he fought Bud Crawford, who's also a switch hitter and versatile. But let's put this in the context. So Canelo, who's being talked and pushed to fight David Benavidez, ex 168-pound world champion, number 1 WBC ranked fighter, is somehow the same as Bud Crawford not fighting Jerome Boots Ennis. Yet the difference is Crawford is currently fighting for a 154-pound world title against the world champion. David Benavidez just moved up to 175 to take on a guy coming out of 4 years of retirement. Boots Ennis is trying to build his name at 147. David Benavidez has been building his name for the last fucking 8 years at 168 pounds, right? And literally had opportunities to unify and take on big fights, chose to duck them, kind of like Boots Ennis did when he walked away from a potential Crawford fight at WBO. Trying to compare these two scenarios is a little ridiculous, right? Because Bud Crawford is currently not a 147-pound fighter, and probably is never going to be a 147-pound fighter. Whereas David Benavidez currently is a 168-pound fighter chasing after Canelo Alvarez. Did somebody say, Enrique Iglesias, I can be your hero, baby. I can kiss away the pain. All the Spence fans morphed into Boots fans. I keep seeing this. Well, it's true, right? They hated Bud Crawford when they supported Spence, and now they're continuing this hate by using a puppet in Boots Ennis. And the reality of the situation is Boots is a great fighter, but let's allow him to build his career, not use him for your fucking narrative, which is what they're doing, right? It's the same as Benavidez. People are using him to do what they've consistently done to Canelo Alvarez, shit on him and hate on him. If he goes out there and knocks out David Benavidez, then people are going to say, what about Morrell? What about rematch Bivol? What about Better BF? What about fucking Iglesias? What about Mimbila? They're always going to have the next fighter that they're going to use to shit on and downplay Canelo Alvarez, just like they've consistently done with Crawford. And whoever Crawford fights is always a cherry pick. He's never that good, whether it was Jeff Horn, whether it was Madrimov, whether it was a Sean Porter that gave Errol Spence the toughest fight of his career. Doesn't matter. People are always going to find ways to downplay and discredit these guys. Boots was offered the fight twice. It's not a duck. Exactly. Crawford moved to 154. Why should he wait around for Boots? Exactly. I hope Eddie doesn't make the Boots versus Blair Cobb fight, being both are from Philly. To be fair, Boots Ennis facing Blair Cobb is probably a good move, right? It's that kind of name opponent, like Isaac Cruz beating a Rolly Romero. People knew Rolly Romero is not as good as Isaac Cruz, but people still wanted to see Isaac Cruz beat the shit out of Rolly Romero. And this is a similar situation. This will get tons of attention because a lot of people will be interested in watching Boots Ennis beat the shit out of Blair Cobb. And that in itself is great for Boots Ennis because it's an easy victory, but it's also probably the biggest fight of his career as far as name recognition. And all the other champions currently at 147 pounds, none of them really have as much name recognition as Blair Cobb has. So it's probably not a bad maneuver. If I was Eddie Hearn and you could do that, I'd definitely do it. You can keep Boots Ennis busy, build his name, and wait until you can actually get one of those other champions to sign the contract. Stanionis is probably going to be the most likely. Do you think Josh Norman Jr. is ready for a Boots fight? Is his name Josh Norman? I think you said his name wrong. But now that you said his name, I'm confused. But no, I don't think he's ready for Boots. Most people thought he was going to lose to Santillan. Like if you watch my breakdown to that fight, that's pretty much what most people felt. They felt that he's been underperforming against limited opposition. They're putting him in a sink or swim type of scenario with Santillan, right? If he was able to beat Santillan, great. He was going to become the WBO champion. But if he came and performed the way he had been previously, Santillan was probably going to beat him, and then Top Rank would have a star in Santillan. So, it worked out the way they planned it, right? It motivated Howard to do what he had to do, get a fantastic, yes, Brian, there you go. I'm thinking, who's Josh fucking Norman? Yeah, Brian Norman. But it made Brian Norman perform above and beyond. And right, sometimes that's what guys need. They need a motivational opponent, and that's what Santillan was. We ended up getting a great performance from Brian Norman, and we would love to see a Brian Norman versus Boots Ennis fight, but I think he probably needs a fight or two as well. Ah, okay, he's a football player. Crawford not fighting Boots is equivalent to Canelo not fighting Andrade. Neither fighter have done anything. It has zero effect on Canelo and Bud's legacy. Exactly. The only difference is Boots Ennis at this point could go on to fucking do a lot of spectacular things moving forward. So if you beat him now, kind of like Floyd beating Canelo, his legacy is going to look great on your resume. Whereas facing Demetrius Andrade, he was played out at that point anyway. So, it had even less effect. Bud will turn Boots to a pair of old Skechers. Boots and Crawford have no interest in fighting each other. Well, they shouldn't, because Boots has his own legacy to build, and Crawford is looking for bigger and better things. He literally hopes to get that Canelo Alvarez fight to become a 3-weight undisputed champion and do what historically has never been done, beat Canelo Alvarez, a pound-for-pound fighter, and then get paid a shitload of cash in the process, and then retire undefeated, a 3-weight undisputed champion, a 5-weight world champion. Just put all those accolades together and think about where that ranks Bud Crawford, a guy who came out of nowhere from his amateur career to end up being a 5-weight world champion. There's less than 10 fighters in the game today in the history of boxing who become 5-weight world champions. Bud Crawford could do that. But then he could also really cement himself as the only guy to ever become a 3-weight world champion. Imagine, when is that going to be likely? What's the likelihood that Inouye is going to go to 126 and become undisputed? Probably not, because there's too much politics once you get to that division, right? And then Usyk, well, what's Usyk going to do? Go down to 175 pounds or become undisputed at Bridger weight, right? So where are we? Fans are forcing Boots versus Bud. Well, Spence fans. If Bud beats Madrimov impressively, do you put him pound for pound number 1 over Usyk and Inouye? Once again, I think Inouye's next fight isn't really going to move him up the ladder. So I think if he beats Madrimov, especially really impressively, kind of like Tank Davis just did against Martin, I definitely think he elevates above Usyk. But Usyk still has the Fury rematch in his pocket. If he goes out and beats Fury again in the rematch, then you're going to have to put him over Crawford, because Madrimov and Fury, right? It's a little different level of fight that we're talking about. For Inouye, obviously, he's going to have to get that Bam Rodriguez, Junto Nakatani, MJ Akhmedov fight, or a great 126-pound fighter, if there's anybody at that weight class that can sort of take over. There are different weight classes with different agendas. That's true. I think Bud deserves more respect. He does. Thoughts on Janibek staying at 160? Well, if the case is that he didn't have a dietitian working for his team, and they feel that if they can add an expert to help him maintain a healthy weight and do things properly, I think it's worth a shot, because he's a unified champion. So, if he moves up to 168, He's not going to have any leverage for any fight at that weight class because he's not going to have any title. He's not going to be elevated as a champion moving up in a weight class. So it makes sense that he tries to keep his unified fights, at least for another fight or two. And then if he can use that position to force a mandatory in the WBO, then you do that. I said Turkey Alashika wants Bud versus Boots. Hello, I'm talking about money. Will Bud accept the fight? That's what I'm asking the first time. Gleam TV. He also wants Bud Crawford versus Canelo Alvarez. Why aren't you fucking mentioning that? Why are you ignoring the elephant in the room? Which fight makes more money? Which fight generates more money? Which fight is bigger? Like literally, you're fucking talking about a mouse to an elephant. If Bud Crawford has these two available fights in front of him, which one do you think he will take? Which one do you think Turkey Alashik is going to push more? Come on, let's be real. Janibek is draining brain fluid to stay at 160. It's crazy. Well, all these guys do that. That's consistent in boxing today. Janibek needs Victor Conte's snack program. Yes, he does. Yes, he does. All these dudes need that. And let's look at this Boxing Voice statement. What did he say? We need your thoughts on the hot debate in boxing world. Is Errol Spence Jr. completely ducking a rematch with Terence Crawford? Or is his move to fight Sebastian Funduro a strategic play to ensure that the rematch takes place at 154 pounds? Well, you can't really say it's strategic now because Crawford is going to be a 154-pound world champion before Spence even fights Funduro. So that narrative is broken, right? But what does happen if Spence goes on and beats Funduro and becomes a world champion at 154 pounds, now Bud Crawford has multiple big fights available to him. Now he's got a Canelo Alvarez fight at 168. He's got a rematch with Errol Spence at 154. And if the only fight available that's going to pay you big money is Boots Ennis, then you have potentially Boots Ennis moving up to 154 to challenge you for your title there. So you just have more options. You also have Tim Tszyu, who potentially could be a big option as well, right? And potentially even a Virgil Ortiz. So now we're talking about 5 potential opponents that are available for Bud Crawford when he becomes the WBO world champion, right? Unification fights with Spence, Tim Tszyu, potentially a big challenge from Boots Ennis, a Canelo Alvarez fight, right, which obviously would be historic. Did I miss somebody else at 154? Even a potential Charlo fight at 154. So for Bud Crawford, this is kind of the perfect time of his career, right? Because the reality is he's going to be 37 years old, but he's never had this many potential big fight opponents available to him. And that shit is fantastic for him. Bud KOs Avician cold, Boots didn't. If Eubanks gets the Canelo fight, would Bomac be able to get to the UK to train him with that whole gun situation? No fucking chance. Bud's resume is better than 99% of other fighters today. I don't see Boots fighting Errol. Why ain't people talking about that fight? Because the people that are using Boots Ennis are Errol Spence fans, right? They did this back at 147 pounds. When Boots Ennis became the IBF mandatory for Errol Spence's title and literally went away from the WBO mandatory position with Bud Crawford, you had Fannin and all of these regular Errol Spence fanboys talking about how, you know, Boots Ennis would beat Bud Crawford, right? Yet the reality is he was chasing fucking Spence. Why aren't you talking about that fight? Why are you ducking and dodging an Errol Spence fight to try to push this guy towards Bud Crawford, right? But unfortunately, their man got fucking destroyed, and now they're hoping for some sort of redemption. If Boots could beat Bud Crawford, now they could have a little bit of redemption. Not much redemption, because it's still not fucking Errol Spence. But, you know, at least somebody would beat him. Feel sorry for Bud. Lost 5 years of his career. It's not that he lost 5 years of his career. He made money consistently from Top Rank, consistently was a world champion. But unfortunately, from 140 pounds to even recently, remember early on this year when Funduro beat Tim Tszyu, right? The talk was that potentially we could be getting a Tim Tszyu Bud Crawford fight, right? But then, of course, once Tim Tszyu lost, then all of a sudden we saw Errol Spence walk into the ring, and now Bud Crawford was being pushed out. Charlo was going to be the mandatory for Madrimov, and of course Funduro, the two-belt unified champion, was going to be facing Errol Spence, and that Murtazayev was going to fight Erickson Lubin. That's what people were talking about, and people were literally mocking and laughing and saying, "Oh, Bud Crawford, what's happening to you now?" They were literally happy to see Bud Crawford once again be fucked over by the PBC at the third weight division, right? Luckily for Turki Al-Sheikh, he went in, spent the money he has, and said, fuck that noise. We're going to continue to push this dude because he is the best fighter from America right now. EJ taking Funduro as right away instead of a tune-up isn't wise. Honestly think Errol is washed. He is washed. He's going to get beat by fucking Funduro. And that's probably the worst look that could happen to him career-wise. Because at least if you lose to Bud Crawford and you retire, you're losing to a future Hall of Famer. If you lose to fucking Funduro, you're losing to who? A fucking freak show, fucking anomaly, right? A guy who's never going to go on to become a pound-for-pound fighter. Punch Drunk believes that Bud was never done bad by the PBC. Yeah, but some people like him are stupid and just push narratives consistently. Somehow Punch Drunk wants PBC fans to love his channel, as well as Teofimo Lopez fans to love his channel, as well as Demetrius Andrade fans to love his channel. He's trying to really fucking kowtow to every fan base so that he can get as much people to watch his channel as possible, right? Kind of like Showbiz the Adult. And I understand these guys are trying to make money from YouTube, so what they're doing is trying to dick ride fucking every fan group out there. But the reality is anyone that's watched boxing and watched Bud Crawford get ducked by Danny Garcia, Adrian Broner, Errol Spence, Keith Thurman, Danny Garcia again, Sean Porter, fucking, Mikey Garcia, Eudanis Ugas, who was his WBO mandatory but left the WBO to go challenge for a WBA regular title, right? Ortiz, and then Boots, knows the dude's been fucking blatantly done wrong for years. Oscar hint Ryan going to 154. Conor Benn is really at 154 with his last two fights weighing in. Lots of smoke at 154. Yeah, it's a good weight division. Ryan Garcia going to get destroyed, though. Brian, who you got? Spence versus Funduro. Funduro isn't a walk in the park. Punch played himself on Spence. Don't listen to Punch Drunk. He's not right in the head. He's still recovering from that fake car crash. He's trying to mimic fucking Errol Spence. Try to get Errol Spence fans to follow him. At this moment, I got Funduro. I don't think Spence has the heart for it anymore. I agree. Charlo is still hanging around. Also, I believe champion in recess for one of the sanctioning bodies, WBA. Yeah, and that's what I said. I mentioned him, Zaki. I said currently for Bud Crawford, he's got a shitload of big name opponents. Boots Ennis, Tim Tszyu, Errol Spence if he beats Funduro, Charlo, and Canelo Alvarez. Never in his career has he had that many potential pay-per-view opponents available to him. Hollow Ninja's got Spence beating Funduro. Damn, really, bro? I think he might get Funduro. Funduro can't keep Spence off him for 12 rounds. Yeah, I think you're mistaken about what version of Errol Spence you're fucking pushing. Honestly, I don't know where Spence's head is at, to tell you the truth. No, man, that dude already told you he's fucking retired. He already said he got a nice farm, lots of money. He never needs to fight again. Do you even know who Spence's trainer is yet? Exactly. The dude don't even have a fucking trainer. He split with his long-term trainer. And you think he's legitimate? He should just fight Charlo. Is Punch Drunk content any good? Occasionally he's got a video that's not bad, but most of these guys are so narrative driven. You know what they're going to say before you even play the video based on the fighter that they're talking about, right? So, if he's talking about Teofimo Lopez, he's going to be like Knockout Boxing, talking about Spence and fucking Tank Davis. It's going to be a whole bunch of dick riding. Oh, look here, Knockout Boxing. One of the main contributors to Bud Crawford hate on YouTube. And it's ridiculous, truthfully. I don't know how somebody can be so negative towards Bud Crawford and everyone associated with Bud Crawford, including Shakur Stevenson and Keyshawn Davis. All three of those fighters consistently get hated on and ridiculed by PBC fanboys, Punch Drunk Boxing, or sorry, Knockout Boxing. Here you go, right here. Here's one of his videos. Bad news. Why is Terence Crawford versus Madrimov on pay-per-view if Turkey doesn't care about making money? How's this bad news? This is a guy who fucking justifies and dick rides every single Errol Spence and Tank Davis fight being on pay-per-view when the cards fucking were shit compared to Bud Crawford's upcoming fight. And so now Turkey is supposed to take a loss and just throw money in the toilet because it's not representing Tank Davis or Errol Spence. If it was Tank Davis or Errol Spence, his narrative would be fucking completely different, right? But because this is Bud Crawford, this is bad news. Why is it fucking bad news? Bud Crawford is probably going to get a career high payday to fight Madrimov, right? And if he wins, he's guaranteed bigger and better fights moving forward, potentially a Canelo Alvarez fight. And a guy like this is going to probably shit on that fight, yet this guy was pushing and praising a potential Errol Spence Canelo Alvarez fight, because that's the kind of hate American boxing channels on YouTube push towards Bud Crawford. Here's the next one. Breaking news. Terence Crawford versus John Ennis becomes realistic. Turkey wants to out-noop the money. I don't know what out-noop means. But so now you're excited that Turkey Al-Sheikh has money and wants to put a Boots Ennis fight on. But when it's a Madrimov fight on pay-per-view, all of a sudden you're not so happy about it, right? This is once again guys like this exposing themselves. He's a guy who's pushing Boots Ennis, not because he's really a Boots Ennis fan, but because he fucking is anti-Bud Crawford and is hoping that anybody will beat him so he can sleep better knowing that his fighter was fucking ruthlessly exposed like we all knew he would be. Rumor is Ronnie Shields. That would be good. I haven't watched Punch Drunk in 18 months. Sean, how did Tito Garcia die? Probably fucking OD'd. Why are they hating on Madrimov? They're not hating on Madrimov. They're hating on Bud Crawford. The same way they shit on the guy that Boots Ennis just fought, right, as an opponent for Bud Crawford, right? Yet no one was negative or hateful when Boots Ennis fought him. Just like when he fought, what's his face? The other Eastern European guy who was his mandatory. Yet people were super excited about Virgil Ortiz fighting him. These dudes are just, they're crazy. Punch Drunk is a fruity clown. I have been on one panel with him, but since the car accident, he hasn't been hanging out with the same people. These Eastern Europeans with great amateur background are killers. Brian, a lot of people say it was a fake car accident. Yeah, some Americans should stay in amateurs longer. They want that money. I don't know, one day he was dying, next day he was going live. Crawford will retire Canelo. Yeah, I mean, that's why I think Canelo Alvarez isn't interested in making that fight. Because the truth is, if he loses to Crawford, he might as well retire, right? And if he beats Crawford, the same old haters that always hate him, they're going to give him zero credit at all. But it comes down to this. Why does Black America hate Bud Crawford? Right? We hear for years from the LDBC, from the John Boxings, from the Eagles, from the Dantes, from others that, everybody else hates Black American fighters. Yet when we see Bud Crawford mentioned, it's the opposite. He gets far more hate from Black America than he gets from anybody else. It's ridiculous, right? The most accomplished Black American fighter in the sport of boxing today, yet he can do no right. Right? He literally gets criticized like Canelo Alvarez does because he should be fighting Boots Ennis because he should move backwards, not forwards, right? It's the same way people are hating on Canelo for not fighting Demetrius Andrade. So once again, he should move backwards, not forwards, right? The narratives people push become ridiculous. And this is why boxing in America is dying, because most of the channels in the States on YouTube that are the biggest channels are so full of shit, so narrative driven, so racially biased that people can't literally listen to them and fucking walk away with anything positive to say. It's like literally listening to fucking ESPN. And the irony is you hear people criticize and hate on ESPN as being racist, yet ESPN is the opposite of racist. They're fucking woke, woke like fucking crazy. But, you know, people love to throw out the term racist, 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 right? That word has died on the YTBC fucking 15 years ago. Where are we? He will be running like Shakur in there. Canelo is intimidated by the, oh my God. See, this is my point. Listen to this guy. He's obsessed with fucking BBC. Sorry, dude. This is not fucking OnlyFans. We're talking boxing here. You can go to an OnlyFans channel and get off with that shit. One answer, Sean, is because he was signed to Bob, not Al. And that's, again, right? We saw that whole thing play out, right? The pro Showtime, the anti-HBO. The pro PBC, the anti-fucking DAZN, the anti-Golden Boy, the anti-fucking Top Rank. And, you know, the irony is the PBC was doing the same thing everybody else was doing, pushing Mexican fighters on their channels more than Black Americans. But stupid people with stupid narratives fucking get exposed every day, and they're too stupid to fucking see it. Which is a stupid reason. If Madrimov beats Crawford, what next for him? Winner versus Ortiz, Bochuk? Well, if he beats Crawford, then he could go up and fight Canelo Alvarez at 168 and get the big payday. 78 and BFTB were heartbroken when Wilder signed with Matchroom with all that shit they talked. Well, you know, and you knew that was going to come back and bite them in the ass, because with all these athletes, it's all about money. And the PBC literally fucking cost Wilder millions of dollars. And this was his opportunity to get it back. So he did what he should do. Fucking signed with Matchroom and got paid in the process. So good for him. Except now his wife's going to take that money. They know that he can close the show down on PBC. I was in a car accident late last year, and for a couple of months, I wasn't feeling great, so I get it, man. Madrimov won't beat Crawford, though. Well, we should never underestimate, because this is what I said at the beginning of this video. Nobody had Bivol beating Canelo Alvarez. Actually, people were talking about Canelo going up to cruiserweight and beating the WBC champion, and we're calling it a cherry pick. Bivol was a cherry pick. Going up to cruiserweight was a cherry pick. That's how fucking delusional people were with what Canelo Alvarez was doing. So he's going up to cruiserweight and fighting Bivol. But what he's doing is he's ducking Andrade. Now, in hindsight, that looks completely stupid and ridiculous. But this is what we see consistently from these YouTube channels. Go check out their channels. And these channels that most people follow only talk about the same fucking content day in and day out. Fucking Fannin, Dante, fucking the LDBC. These dudes are not where you go to find out about the sport of boxing. Just the opposite. If you go to those channels to find out about boxing, you literally won't know fucking anything about boxing. You won't even know that there's a huge fight card starting sometime soon in Japan with Junto Nakatani fighting. I had Bivol beating Canelo. Me too, but that's because we're boxing fans. We looked at Canelo Alvarez moving up to 175 and facing Kovalev. Looked at how Kovalev was outboxing him in that fight, and then thought, well, fuck, man. If Kovalev was able to do that, Bivol's going to be able to do that even better. And that's what happened. They're jealous to see him winning in life. That's the thing, eh? Yeah. I mean, I won't point fingers at anybody particular, because I think this is just people in general. Some people just can't stand other people winning, right? I have no problem with people winning. I think it's great. And if you circle yourself around with people that are winning, then winning is going to come to you. It's better to hang out with people that are winning than hang out with people that are fucking losing, right? It's just a far better thing for you as an individual. So why would I hate on people that are doing what they need to do and are being successful in the process? That's why when people take fights and do what they do on YouTube, I say, I understand people are trying to make a living, trying to get paid. I ain't hating the player, because that's the game. People are doing what they have to do to be successful. So I get it. Let's not forget PBC fanboys attacked and mocked Crawford's wife and family. Literally shit on Crawford's wife because she's not the most beautiful woman. But yet that woman has been with him from fucking day one, giving him sons, has fucking been a great support system for him. He's got a great family support system and friend network around him. I mean, to be in the scenario that Bud Crawford is in, everybody wishes they were that lucky, right? Really wishes they were that lucky, because literally he's got the American dream, and more power to him. Crawford has too much experience and too many tools in his arsenal, also one of the fittest 37-year-olds on earth. But if I was Crawford's manager, I would tell him to stay away from Canelo at 168. It's too much of a jump in weight. But how are you going to walk away from potentially $50 million? Let's just put this in perspective. Some people love the narrative, right? And they would love to say, well, Canelo, Crawford retired undefeated. But that's more about you and your narrative, pushing the whole Andre Ward and fucking Floyd Mayweather narrative. Look, Black Americans can't be beat, right? But yet these dudes literally walked away from fights that they should have taken, specifically Andre Ward, big money fights, a guy who never got big money fights. If Crawford could get a huge fight against Canelo Alvarez and make over $50 million in the process, he would be stupid not to fucking take that fight. The risk reward is well worth it. Well worth it. Did you see Helenius was suspended for 2 years for failing a steroid test before the AJ fight? I do. They always compare every fighter to Floyd. Ryan getting all kinds of women. Yeah, but Ryan is also a guy whose career is never going to be like Bud Crawford, right? I would be like Ryan. I would shoot myself in my foot, fucking cash out, enjoy fucking my success, and fucking my career would be over before it began. But in the process, I would enjoy myself like fucking crazy. Crawford's enjoying himself on a different level. Not fucking with extravagance, drugs and women and parties and this stuff. He does strong family value type of stuff with his kids, with his homies, right? Eats well, drinks. I don't think he drinks, but people around him obviously enjoy being around him and his success, and obviously his family. He's creating generational wealth. Whereas Ryan Garcia is going to be fucking broke before he's 35. Bud doesn't have a balloon in weight to fight Canelo. He can come in at 162. Exactly. Well, he weighs more than that already. He walks around sometimes at 180 pounds. He's not a small dude. So he could easily make the weight. He's just as tall as Canelo Alvarez, not as thick, but he's obviously longer. On fight night, Canelo may be 10, 15 pounds bigger than him. But the reality is Canelo still has to catch him. Israel Madrimov is a strong fighter. He's strong and puts combinations together and good timing on his punches. He's also fast, hard puncher, and awkward. So it's going to be difficult for Bud Crawford to time him early. Too many fans look at resumes, but never the style. That's true. Styles make fights. Tell Iceman I said, hey, Sugar Plum. The style is what wins the fight. Ryan potentially fighting an exhibition in Japan. Why not? A lot of fucking hot bitches there. Ryan will have a good time. He'll do his Mike Tyson in Japan. 5, 6 women a night, get paid big bucks. Jags in the house. What's up, sir? I wonder if Bud's power will carry up to 154. I think Crawford's power will still be as explosive as it was. Obviously, guys at 154 are probably going to be able to take it better, right? Because they're going to be thicker, heavier, and used to it. But I still think his power is still going to be just as concussive as it always was. Hold on, I need to plug in my computer. Sorry, Lily. Here we go. There we go. Bud was training with Andre Ward. Iron sharpens iron. Even though I don't know if fucking training with Andre Ward is sharpening your iron. Andre Ward's been retired for how long now? I mean, don't get me wrong. There's probably some things you could definitely do working out with an Andre Ward. But Andre Ward is no fucking Madrimov. He's not as hard a puncher. He's probably not as fast. He's not as awkward. Like, that's the thing that makes Madrimov, I think, difficult, right? He's a very awkward fighter. And so it's not easy to time people when they're unconventional. It's much easier to fight a great unconventional fighter than, a good awkward fighter. That's why what's-his-face gave Floyd Mayweather a good fight. The Drunken Master, because awkward. He was just awkward, and you couldn't time him as easily as you could somebody that was more orthodox. Bud versus Madrimov is going to be fireworks, Sean. I think so. Not long till the Nakatani fight. I know. Does anyone have a link? Does the change from 8 ounces to 10-ounce gloves at 154 hurt or help Bud? Well, it's going to help him because now Madrimov's power is not going to be quite as devastating as it could be. But it could also, I don't think it will necessarily play out too much for him because, I don't think he's going to be punching harder than people Madrimov trains with already. I think Bud will go the distance, 8-4 type of fight. Exactly, Newton. What time is Nakatani fight happening? Probably starting at 6, I would think. Both Bud and Madrimov are skilled in grappling, so clinching will be difficult. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Bud knows how to adapt to any situation. That's what makes him great, right? That's a definite benefit he has over Madrimov. Madrimov obviously had a great amateur resume. But is still learning the ropes as a pro, right? And now you step in and face a fighter like Bud Crawford, and he's facing somebody that he's never faced before. Don't get me wrong, Michel Soro is a very good fighter, very underrated. Michel Soro, he fought twice. So that is going to really help him prepare for a guy like Bud Crawford. Obviously, also training with Bivol is going to help you as well. Even though Bivol obviously is a very different fighter than Bud Crawford, right? They're not the same kind of fighters. But obviously, when you train against great fighters like that, it's definitely going to be beneficial for you. Madrimov could be the next Lomachenko. No chance. He doesn't fight like Lomachenko. The next Lomachenko is probably that 130-pound fighter that I was talking about, the gold medal winning Olympian, or Bam Rodriguez. Both of them fight a little more like Lomachenko. What's his face? Who is he? Well, I can't think of his name. The 130-pound fighter. Come on, people. He just had a big victory last weekend, along with Roman Gonzalez, who had a big knockout win. Bam is nasty. Bam is nasty. There, Albert Batigayev. Similar to Madrimov, 10-0, 7 KOs, no draw, and no controversial victory. Just beat John O'Carroll, even though it still doesn't list his victory over John O'Carroll. So he should be 11-0 with 8 KOs. And John O'Carroll was a good fighter, and he beat him. And John O'Carroll looked fucking huge in that fight. That kid is a good fighter. Obviously, though, being a great amateur gold medal winner, is not the same once you get to the pros. He got touched a bit more than he should in that fight. Bud's top wins: a washed Porter, who retired after; a washed Kell Brook; a washed Spence, debatable, but he didn't look good, versus Ugas. So, Jeremy, I get the perception that you're a hater. It's easy to then discredit and downplay people's victories. I notice you ignore Postal, who was an undefeated champion when he beat him, and went on to fucking have quite a few big performances after the fact, up until he was 37, 38 years old against top guys at 140 and gave them all good fights. Porter, literally a guy who fucking was the toughest fight Errol Spence was ever in. So you say a wash Porter, but that wash Porter was what, 1 year removed from fucking beating or fighting Errol Spence this close to a victory. Cal Brook was washed, so then he was washed when he fought Spence too, right? And as far as fucking Spence, of course now he's washed. He's washed because he got beat. If he would have won, I think Jeremy Reed would have fucking been talking about him as the best fighter in the history of boxing, because that's what Errol Spence fans do. They've been downplaying and shitting on Crawford for fucking years, which makes it look even more ridiculous that your fighter fucking got his ass beat so badly. Bam is nasty. Bam is really good. Cruz, you were upset, I imagine, that your daddy, Donald Trump, almost said bye-bye. Me? How is Donald Trump my daddy? I'm not fucking American. See, stupid people who just like to fucking say stupid things. The irony is that would reflect on your country if Donald Trump would have been assassinated, showing how fucked your country is right now, right? And how the majority of the world doesn't listen to anything Americans say because you guys are fucking delusional, unfortunately. And when it comes to boxing, you expose yourself even more so. So keep up the good work, Roger Burns, Mr. Burns' illegitimate brother. None of those guys were washed. They all came off of great performances. So 2 more hours. Iceman, yes. I saw a report that Tank was looking for more money for the Loma fight. Yeah, I heard he was looking for a $40 million guarantee before he would sign for that fight, which, I still think the fight's going to happen because Loma doesn't negotiate based on money. He negotiates based on getting big fights. So, but if the fight falls through, we know why it fell through, because Tank Davis is overpricing himself. He has no faith that the fight's going to make money on pay-per-view. Ricky Burns, Gamboa, Postal, Ndongo. I wouldn't really say Ndongo, but oh yeah, I forgot to mention a washed Amir Khan. Yeah, dude, Jeremy Reed, you can say whatever you want, but that guy still beat the fuck out of your favorite fighter and basically sent his ass into fucking early retirement. And the history books are going to fucking show that Errol Spence was fucking brutally exposed by Bud Crawford, the 4-weight, 2-weight undisputed champion. Whereas Errol Spence couldn't fucking even become more than a 1-weight world champion. Cal Brook came off of 4 great performances before Bud. Keith Thurman ducked Bud for so long. They all ducked Bud. See, that's what this guy is failing to talk about. How all these dudes, Keith Thurman, Errol Spence, Ugis, fucking Boots Ennis, fucking Danny Garcia, Adrian Broner, all primed, all fucking ducked Bud Crawford, right? But you're going to ignore that because you're a fanboy. You're not a boxing fan. You're a fanboy. It's solid, but nothing crazy. Amir and Brook were shot. Albert Batagayev, I've seen him in the amateurs, but I haven't watched him as a pro yet. Check him out. Bud, amazing. He got caught. It happens. PBC will have to do 500 Ks, buys just to break even. Ndongo beat Ricky Burns, a 3-division champion. Yeah, okay, but, let's put that victory into context. Nobody really thought Ricky Burns was that fucking great of a fighter. I believe there was another pew-poo. The angle of object flying from an ear, no way. Angle coming from higher position. Keith Thurman has been calling out Bud recently. Bud now doesn't want it. My God, Jeremy Reed, the more you open your mouth, the stupider you fucking sound. Your mother would be fucking proud that her son is fucking a moron. Literally. Speak some more, because we love to see the stupid shit that pours out of your trap. Like, literally, all you're doing is exposing yourself as fucking an idiot. And we got a lot of those in the world, but we can check you on that list as well. Pacquiao, Thurman, Spence, Hughes, etc. should have happened on Bud when he came to the division. Exactly. Exactly. But we're going to discredit Bud Crawford. It's like when people tried to discredit fucking Golovkin for literally every single champion over a fucking 8-year period, basically ducking him. But then it's his fault. He should have fought guys at 154 because that would have proved himself. Or he should have fought a fucking an Andre Ward coming out of 2 years of fucking retirement at 175 pounds because that would have proven something. Oh my God. Give me a break. Keith Thurman is drier than those raisins I'm eating. Keith Thurman ducked Tim, bro. Where's the x-ray for the shoulder? Well, not that anyone fucking... Literally, people were saying that Tim Tszyu cherry-picked Keith Thurman. But you expect Bud Crawford to still talk about that dude? That dude is irrelevant. As I just said earlier in this fight, right now, or this video, Bud Crawford is in the perfect point of his career, kind of like Hagler, kind of like B-Hop, and quite a few historical great fighters when all the rain poured to their pockets late in their careers, right? Now you got a Canelo Alvarez fight, a potential Tim Tszyu fight, a potential Errol Spence rematch, which I know Jeremy Reed is fucking scared that that will happen because his fighter will get beat fucking again, a potential Boots Ennis fight, and a potential Charlo fight, right? All those fights are big. Obviously, Boots Ennis is probably the baby fight out of all of those, but all the other fights are real big, legitimate fucking pay-per-view fights. But what can you do in boxing when, unfortunately, the majority of people that jump on American YouTubes are just stupid, ignorant, and as we like to describe them, dumbasses, right? Keith, I want $10 million to fight anyone. My wife will leave me, Thurman. I didn't get 10 million and my wife left me. Keith fights once every 3 years and he only wants to fight Clarissa Shields. Sorry, Sean, I'm still laughing at Jeremy's previous comment. Jeremy is a fucking idiot. That's why he hasn't made another follow-up comment, because you can only be so stupid. There's not that many statements you can make that are as stupid as that. Say, oh, fuck, lo and behold, he's going to make another one. You say Thurman is irrelevant now, but was Bud irrelevant when he said Thurman ducked Bud? Thurman ducked Bud when Thurman was a fucking world champion. I guess that's difficult for you to comprehend, right? Keith Thurman has really been irrelevant since he got beat by a 40-year-old Filipino and literally fucking talks a bunch of bullshit on social media and then goes on to fight nobody. That dude should have fought fucking Adrian Broner 2 years ago in a big money fight, but he chose to duck Adrian Broner. So what do you think the reality of him fucking trying to fight Bud Crawford are? You're fucking moronic. But then again, you're an Errol Spence fan. The funny thing is, Errol Spence fans, when Errol Spence almost died in a car crash, these guys also took blunt force trauma to their heads as well, right? So they could fucking identify with him that much more. So they're all a little fucking slow post Errol Spence's near-death car crash, right? And of course, it's not, it's racist. The car was racist. The car fucking tried to get rid of Errol Spence, because of course it's made by white people, right? So of course, it was all fucking a big agenda to get rid of a great Black American fighter. Yet the best win that he has on his career is what? Sean Porter. He was losing that fight until he dropped him late. Mikey Garcia. Oh, so he fought a lightweight. Best win of his career, a lightweight. I even thought Errol would beat Spence. In the great words of Del Boy, what a plonker. I'm losing brain cells reading Jeremy's comments. Unfortunately, Jeremy has no brain cells, so he doesn't have to worry about that. I never thought Errol would beat Spence. You mean you never thought Errol would beat Crawford? Errol Spence is more active than Keith Thurman. That's true. Beat Crawford. See, all today's video did was prove my point that for some reason Black Americans hate Bud Crawford. And the irony is that Bud Crawford is the most accomplished Black American boxer today. So literally they're hating on themselves. Yet then they want to cry and moan about how everybody hates Black American fighters. Yet nobody hates Black American fighters more than Black Americans, right? That's the irony of this fucking conversation. Shit, 60-year-old Mike Tyson more active than Keith Thurman. I almost forgot who Keith Thurman was. That's how irrelevant he is. The reality is, I mean, I'm a Tim Tszyu fan, and I understood why they wanted to take Keith Thurman, because he's a good scalp to put on your resume because of his name recognition. But it was never a fight that people thought was going to be a difficult fight. No one thought, well, nobody realistically felt that Keith Thurman would fucking beat him, except for what's his face? Who's my man? The ex-military guy from YouTube, who was Keith Thurman's biggest fan. Did the Grand Wizard give you a haircut? Oh my God, listen to fucking Roger Burns. Roger Burns. So you need to come here and troll and scream out racial fucking narratives, but pretend that you're somehow a boxing fan. Shouldn't you be here fucking praising Bud Crawford and his great career and how he's one of the best fighters in the world today? Because that's really what this video is. We're literally here praising a Black American fighter, but you're going to talk about racism. So I guess me praising Bud Crawford is somehow racist now, because if I praise Bud Crawford, then I'm downplaying and criticizing all other Black American welterweights and 154 pounders. How could you forget Keith Thurman's hairline? What do you think about the situation with Janibek? Andre's manager said IBF have to be stripped Janibek. Why would anyone have to strip Janibek? Janibek wasn't fighting a mandatory. He was a stay busy opponent. Literally, that's what it is. A stay busy opponent. And because of health concerns, the fight fell through. All you do is re-sanction the fight. And then if it doesn't happen further, then at that point you strip him. But at this point, I don't understand all these people so quick to want to fucking strip Janibek. Whereas these guys were happy that Charlo was going through mental health fucking issues for 2 years, not fighting anybody, but still the WBC champion. Thurman was never going to fight Tszyu. PBC planned to punk him with the Funduro switch up. I wouldn't be surprised. Same with Ugis replacing Spence. Keith Thurman is ducking Clarissa too. Well, he should take that fight, because that would just be justified to watch him fucking beat Clarissa's ass all over the ring. Because even though we're mocking and ridiculing Keith Thurman, he still beat the crap out of fucking her. People are stupid, man. You doing commentary for the Nakatani fight? Probably not. I'm supposed to go out tonight, so I'll be probably going out. For some reason, my friend always wants to fucking meet up to go out Saturday night at like 7 o'clock. It's like, it's fucking 7, man. There's no rush. We don't have to fucking meet up that early. But, you know, you didn't really say anything, so thought you weren't bothered. Kind of made other plans to cook and chill out at home. There you go. So I guess I could. People are so fucking sensitive. You say you want to go out. Okay. So we had a conversation about different topics. And so you said, let's go somewhere different. Okay. So you want to go somewhere different. You know, you ever have those friends that always want to plan everything? So you leave it to them to plan it because they want to do it. It's their plan. So you let them do it. But because you weren't more enthusiastic, all of a sudden you weren't interested. Yet out of everybody this person knows, the only person that consistently fucking follows through on anything is me. But okay. Right. I literally went to watch football at fucking 3 o'clock in the morning when I had to work the next day because he wanted to go watch football. But because I wasn't super enthusiastic, I don't know. Literally were talking about some English woman that died in Taichung. Right. And that distracted us from obviously the bigger topic, but whatever. Okay. So obviously I'm staying home tonight. So maybe I can do a running narrative and dialogue with the Nakatani fight. I just have to see if I can find a good feed, switch to my iPad, and we'll see how it goes. Harkin, will you go live for the fight? Why did Porter retire after Bud's fight if he wants a shell of his former self? Jeremy Reed, come on, man. The irony with that stupid statement is Floyd Mayweather, one of the best wins on his resume, is literally against the guy that literally retired after the Floyd Mayweather fight. But you never hear Floyd Mayweather fans, Jeremy Reed in this case, talk about how, oh, if that fighter wasn't shot, why did he retire after that fight? Like, people will fucking go to any extent to try to discredit and downplay. Jeremy Reed, you're a Black American guy who's going out of your way to shit on a Black American fighter, a Hall of Famer, a future great, a guy you probably use in narratives talking about how he's pound for pound number one and should be over a Nui and Usyk. I guarantee you use that narrative on other people's shows. Sean Porter said he wanted to prove himself one last time. The WBO forced that fight. They did. They forced him. He could have walked away, and then he would have looked like fucking he was ducking, just like every other PBC fighter. Sean Porter said this himself on a podcast. He was done. Oh, my God. You can say whatever you want, Jeremy Reed. You're only proving the point of my video today, that Black Americans hate Bud Crawford. And I don't understand why. I don't understand why. Crawford has only represented you and your people in the best way. He doesn't talk bullshit on social media. He doesn't fucking do any of that shit all these younger guys are doing, constantly fucking saying stuff but never delivering. He's consistently done exactly what you want fighters to do. Literally became an undisputed champion in 2 weight divisions. Now has moved up to his 4th weight division. Potentially might move up to his 5th weight division to try to become undisputed in a 3rd weight division. Something nobody in boxing history has ever done. But you still want to find every excuse to discredit him and hate on him. You sound like knockout boxing. There was a long period of time when nobody called out Bud at 147. The Bud hate came from 78. Well, all those PBC fanboys, Errol Spence dudes. Unlike every other PVC fighter, I actually do have a lot of respect for Sean Porter. He was the one to say, I will take that fight. Well, and that's the thing. Sean Porter's whole career was made up of taking that fight, which is why he never successfully defended one of his welterweight titles, because he took on tough opponents and always lost against a tough opponent, right? Whether it was against Kell Brook, Errol Spence, or Bud Crawford, or Keith Thurman. The irony is some of us never called fucking Sean Porter great, never said that he was a future Hall of Famer. We always knew the truth. We weren't blowing smoke up people's ass, unlike some people, like Jeremy Reed. Kell Brook was a warrior too. Kell Brook, he was his worst problem, right? Getting too fat between fights, never being fucking motivated enough, too busy chasing that Amir Khan money. Kell Brook made no excuses after losing to Bud. As a real champion, why would you make excuses? You're never going to be praised, unless, of course, it's PBC fans that follow you, by making excuses, right? Like Errol Spence, like Deontay Wilder, like a plethora of PBC fighters who've gotten beat, right? Then there's always an excuse. But historically, if you lose, there's no room for excuses. You just accept it. You fucking give praise to the guy that beat you and talk about how you'll try to get revenge, redemption, or fucking get back one day soon. Sean Porter deserves to be a Hall of Famer if AB does. AB is no Hall of Famer. Broner does not deserve to be a Hall of Famer. Sean Porter does not deserve to be a Hall of Famer. I know AB was a 4-weight world champion, but his resume is garbage. The big names on his resume are all fighters that beat him. The best win on his resume outside of fucking who? Who's the best win on his resume? Paulie Malignaggi. Is Paulie a Hall of Famer? Yeah, Kel never fully recovered after GG. Yeah, that ruined his career. Haney with 3 losses and still undefeated. Well, you know, it is what it is. But people, I think I'll call this a day, and I'm going to try to get like a feed for the Nakatani fight since I am in for the night. So I'll be here all night. So uh, keep your eyes open. Maybe we can go live tonight for the fight card out of Japan featuring Junto Nakatani. And I will see you then. Peace out, everyone. Have a good weekend.